You two, exclaimed a shocked Mr. Legonk. What are you two doing here? From inside the hall I could still hear clapping. The Year 5s must have been getting up onto the stage. More like, what are you doing here? Said Vanya coolly. Ah, well, stammered Mr. Legonk. I looked from the little pool of liquid on the floor to the bottle that Mr. Legonk was holding. The label was half hidden by his chubby paw, but I could still read what it said. Bold Away, Extreme Anti-Boldness Cream. A horrible feeling built up in my belly. What was he planning on using that for? And then I realised. Mr. Legonk was standing right next to a huge red water tank that nearly filled the whole room. The lid of the tank had been unscrewed and was sitting on the shelf next to it. You've poured hair growth cream into the sprinkler system, I said in disbelief. If it goes off, everyone will end up hairy like Roman, said Vanya. Sweat was beading on Mr. Legonk's upper lip. He let out a nervous laugh. Just a little prank. Teach these ungrateful pests a lesson. A prank? I asked, an unpleasant feeling building in my guts. Mr. Legonk was shaking. I couldn't tell if this was because he was scared or angry, or maybe a bit of both. They need to learn their lesson. You can't put fire safety ahead of a great play. But that's really cruel and quite strange, said Vanya. There was a mad twinkle in Mr. Legonk's eye now. He was twitching, and his great tidal wave of hair had flopped over onto one side. Oh yes, they'll pay. They'll pay for ruining my play. They'll pay for not listening to my ideas. And that Mr. Noblet will pay for taking away my chance to finally go on stage and act in front of an audience. As soon as he'd spoken, his hand shot in front of his mouth, as though trying to pull the words back in. Wait a minute, I thought. What do you mean, finally go onto stage? Asked Vanya. Mr. Legonk shook his head. I didn't say that. Yes, you did, said Vanya. No, I didn't. I don't want to be cruel, but we've already established that Mr. Legonk was a terrible actor. There was no way we were going to believe him. Vanya wasn't about to let him get away with it either. She was like a dog with a bone. You've never been on stage before, have you? But you said you were a professional actor. I knew it as soon as I first met you. I googled you and I couldn't find your name anywhere. Mr. Legonk pulled himself up to his full height. I am an actor. I am. From the hall we could hear more applause. The Year 5s must have finished their song and dance, but we weren't ready to go back just yet. All right, said Vanya. What have you been in? Lots of things, he said, looking hurt. Vanya folded her arms. Name one. Well, I've just been in a major French production, if you must know. I told you that already. What was it called? Mr. Legonk mumbled something that sounded like mini. From outside, we could hear Mrs. MacDonald calling our names to tell us we were about to go on stage. We just ignored her. We heard her tut and her footsteps go back into the hall. I didn't hear that. Sorry, said Vanya to Mr. Legonk. Mr. Legonk huffed out his cheeks. I said, he paused. Vanya raised an eyebrow. I said I was in an advert for oven-cooked French fries. I played, he took a deep breath, a dancing potato. I couldn't help myself here. I started laughing. See, he said, slumping down so he was sitting on the ground. Everyone always laughs at Legonk. There was a long, awkward pause. Mr. Legonk seemed so sad that I actually felt a bit sorry for him. I should never have taken this stupid job, never. I didn't want to teach, I wanted to act. But one can't just live off baked beans and free oven chips forever. So I signed myself up to a drama teaching agency. And when Rosie's father rang, promising double wages, Well, he sighed and looked sadly at the bottle in his hand. Oh, what have I done? He cried. I'm a fool. What kind of monster have I become? Turning people hairy. I should never have come back here. Vanya put her hand on his shoulder. It was a bit silly, but come on. We all make mistakes, she said kindly. Wait a second, I said. If you aren't an actor, then who are that man and woman? You know, the ones from the TV and film industry who've come to watch Rosie perform. Mr. Legonk gulped guiltily. Well, they do work in the film and TV industry, so technically that wasn't a lie. What do they do? Asked Vanya. He works for a TV repair shop and she sells popcorn at the cinema. Ha, I said, this was brilliant. Rosie was showing off all her talents to two people, and the only things that they could do for her was to fix her telly or put extra toppings on her popcorn. Fantastic. Rosie's father is going to go mad, I said. I didn't bother telling him that he should be more scared of Rosie. When she found out she wasn't going to Hollywood, she's probably going to skin him alive. Oh no, I've just realised, said Mr. Legonk suddenly. What about the cream in the tank? What if... Don't worry, it's fine, said Vanya. Now that we knew he was going to be ruining Rosie's dreams, I think the pair of us were actually starting to like him a little bit. The sprinklers are only going to go off if there's a fire. I smiled at Vanya and then at Mr. Legonk, who smiled sadly back. No problem, she carried on. We'll tell Mr. Noblet. You can come clean. They'll get the water out of the tank and nobody will become hairy after all. And you can't be that terrible if you've made Rosie look that silly. Thank you, child, said Mr. Legonk, climbing to his feet. I don't deserve your kindness. I was a terrible teacher. You certainly were, said Rosie. Mr. Legonk laughed. There was a great belly laugh that made his whole body shake. Maybe you should give the acting another bash, I said. I mean, you've only been on the telly. Like my mum said, George Mooney started playing as singing Satsuma and he's now the most famous actor in the world. You're right, said Mr. Legonk. I'll do that. And I promise I'll never set foot in a school again. Everything was perfect, for about half a second anyway, until a massive kaboom shook the building. It sent tins and boxes rattling off the shelves in the cupboard. What was that? Panted Mr. Legonk, holding his heart. The large tank began to glug. There was a sound of water rushing through the pipes. I looked at the tank and then I looked at Vanya. I could feel the blood draining from my face. Oh no, she said. The sprinklers, I said. This could only mean one thing. Gamble's mince pie bomb, we both said together. We sprinted back towards the hall.